Okay, so this is a quick overview of how to run awards in Lineup Ninja. Here's the overall process. I'm going to run through this first and then jump into the product and show you how to do all of these things. So first of all, we need to create the event. Then we need to set up the content portal, which is the thing that your entrants are going to log into. Then you need to create the submission flow. The submission flow is essentially the form that people will fill in, the stages in which that form can exist, email templates that are associated with those stages. So things like, don't forget the deadline's coming up, or if you want, you can have emails to say things like you've been shortlisted. Also, we're going to set up the judges' questions in there. Once it's created, we then publish that submission flow into the content portal to make sure that people can actually see it when they do log in. We need to invite our judges, and we might want to set up reviewer groups or groups of our judges. Often we would want those to correspond to the categories of the awards. So you'd have, for this category, we've got these 3 judges or whatever. Once that's all set up and we're starting to receive some entries, then we want to monitor and manage those entries or submissions. I'm going to use the term entry and submission interchangeably because in Lineup Ninja, we call them submissions, but in the awards world, it's more common that they're called entries, but they mean the same thing for the purposes of this video. So you're going to monitor and manage your entries or submissions. Then we're going to assign those entries to our judges. And then we'll watch their scores coming in and decide who's going to be shortlisted and so on. Okay, so that's the overall process that you're going to do. Let's have a look at how that looks in the product itself. So first things first, set up the event. So I'm in my team homepage. These are all my events. I want to create a new one. Let's just call it Awards Demo. Give it a time zone. This will automatically create a subdomain for the portal for the event. So this is where people are going to log in. If you're running the same awards multiple years, you might want to stick the year on the end of it so it's unique. Okay. Hit create event. And once it's done, we can log in and have a quick look at the portal. You can create dates in here, but that's really much more relevant if you're running a conference and you need to schedule sessions into times. So I'm going to skip over that for now. We're just going to go straight to the content portal. So in here, you'll want to set up a few things. The first thing is you've got the landing page. This is where your award entrants will arrive when you send them this link. So you'll want to add a banner, maybe change this text, and you can also edit this button as well. So if you hover over an area, it reveals the edit button and you can click that to edit it. So you can change the wording, you can choose colors and so on. So that's the landing page. If you want to add a banner, hit the pencil, upload the desktop and mobile images to it. On the home page, this is once they've clicked this and gone through the login flow, they'll end up at this home page, which is the logged in experience in the portal. And in here, again, you can add a different banner if you want, or you can copy the one from the landing page. What most clients tend to do is they'll have quite a deep banner that takes up, I don't know, half the page. And then for the home page, a much shallower banner that only takes up a little strip across the top, because down here you've got a lot more content on this page. Anyway, you'll probably want to edit things like the text here, because this is just our default boilerplate text. And it describes things like you can see any scheduled sessions that you're taking part in. That's not relevant to awards, so you want to delete that kind of stuff. The open calls for content, this is where the award entry form is going to be accessed via this section. So you might want to change the text there as well. These sections are grayed out. They're not going to be relevant to awards, so you don't have to worry about those. The My Tasks section is if somebody is entering an award and they've half filled in their entry, so it's now a to-do for them to finish it off. This section will appear and their submission will live under this to-do section until they've done it, in which case it'll move down here. Okay, that's the portal. We now need to create the awards submission flow. So go to submission flows. Lineup Ninja has 2 templates here, one which is really for sort of calls for papers and the other one is for awards. So this is the one we're going to choose. Hit create awards flow, give it a name, Industry Awards 2027, and you can give it a deadline. This will apply to the draft stage for your awards. So let's just say July the 14th. It'll default to 5 minutes to midnight. You can change it if you want. Okay, so hit create flow, and this will create the flow. When it does that, it will come back with a little flow configuration kind of checklist thing. There's some parameters that you can set in here, like what's the maximum number of entries that a submitter can submit, submission ID prefix, things like this. Do you want to perform reviews? Yes, you will, because reviews is the judging process, and obviously you want to do that for awards. By default, Lineup Ninja has a simple in-app messaging tool. It's on by default. You can switch it off if you want. And then the deadlines that we set in the previous screen are shown in here. There's 3 different things here. One is the draft stage. There's also this new submissions can be created by the submitter until this date. Maybe you've got some entrants and they get in touch saying, oh, we really want to submit, but we've made a start on our submission, but we haven't got time to finish it. Can you extend the deadline a little bit? You can keep this deadline so people can't create new submissions, but you can just move the deadline of draft back a couple of days if you want to, for example. So we're going to save that configuration, and that brings us to the section here where we can edit the form. How are we doing against our list? Okay, so we've created the submission flow. Now we need to add the questions. By default, you just get one question, which is what is the name of your entry? What we recommend for nearly all of our clients is that you add a question before this, which is a category question. The way I'm going to do this in the awards process is I'm just going to create a custom question. I need to make a bit of a qualification here. It's going to be a simple choose one question. Choose which category you are entering. So my qualification is one of these custom questions is fine for awards. If you need to add custom questions for gathering information about conference sessions, be very careful when you just use a custom question. Often it's better to create a custom field first and then map this question to it. But that's a bit of an aside, but it's really important because if you don't do that, data that you capture in questions like this won't be copied across to sessions that you subsequently create and add to your agenda. Doesn't matter for awards, so don't worry about that for now, but just keep it in mind if you're ever running conferences as well. Okay, so choose which category you are entering, and then you want to give it some options. So the options are down here. Let's say best manufacturer. A new option. Best newcomer. Best campaign. And maybe we'll have a rising star. And for now, let's just say we've got a Lifetime Achievement Award. Okay. So now we've got some categories. What we can now do is we can move these questions around. So what I want to do actually is put that as the first question. So I'm going to grab the little grab handle, this little equal sign thing, and move that to the top. So that's the category question first. Then what's the name of your entry? And then what I want to do is have different questions based on what type of submission it is. So let's say I want to capture their entry details. Why are you the best manufacturer? And I'm going to give them 12 rows. I'm going to give them a word limit of 500 words. And if you want, you can set a minimum, 250. And the other thing I want to do, because this question is specific to the manufacturer category, I only want to show this question if they've chosen manufacturer. So I'm going to use what's called a display rule. Which category are you entering? And it's best manufacturer. I think that's all I'm going to say about questions. One of the other things about these submission flows is we've got these things that we call submission stages. So you've got draft. I'm going to skip over invited for now. Submitted. And the awards submission flow template includes these submission stages. These stages allow you to control things like which questions are visible when it's in that stage or which ones are editable. So for example, when it's in the draft stage, these questions are editable. Once it's been submitted, these questions become locked. If you edit the stage, you can change the question visibility here and choose, actually, I want them to still be able to edit their entry. Chances are you're not going to want to do that, but that's how you can do it. One of the other things that you can edit that belongs to this sort of stage is the email template that is associated with it. So, for example, the submitted one will have an email which is sent to the submitter. It's triggered when the submission moves into submitted. So then it will send them this email, thank you for your entry. Again, this has just got our boilerplate copy in it. So you'll want to edit this email to use your text. You've got access to mail merge fields effectively down here as well. So you want to edit that. Also, you may want to set up in the draft stage deadline reminders. So if you add email, you can set a scheduled reminder and say it's going to happen. I think our deadline was somewhere around about here. So let's set it about a week before. Say deadline reminder and put your copy in here. That email will only get sent to submitters who have still got a submission in the draft stage. All the people who've submitted all their entries will not get spammed with that email. Another thing to be careful of with awards is if you subsequently decide that you want to move your entries from submitted into shortlisted, or indeed winners and runners up, be careful about whether you're going to trigger an automatic email. And also, if you do move a submission to this stage, this is what it's going to look like. If the entrant logs into the portal, they'll be able to see this has been shortlisted. Also, it's going to send them an email automatically when you move their submission into the shortlisted stage. For the winners, it continues to say shortlisted. It doesn't send them an email and it doesn't tell them that they're the winner. And similarly with runners up, it doesn't actually spoil the news that they haven't won. Withdrawn, that's only there if they choose to withdraw their entry, or if you withdraw their entry on their behalf, it will update it like this, and it will send them an email to say, you've been withdrawn. Also, you get an email to say, this entry has been withdrawn. Okay, so email templates, really worth paying a bit of attention to them and making sure they say the right messages and that they're triggered by the events that you want them to be triggered by. Okay, so the next thing is judging. So Lineup Ninja will not create the judging system for you when you set up your awards submission flow. So you need to come here and create it. Just hit the blue plus button under review stages. If you want, you can give your judges deadline. Let's just create that. And what this is going to allow us to control is things like which of the award entry questions are we actually going to show to the judges. If we were capturing information about the actual submitter, like contact details or something like that, using the form, we could, let's say for the sake of argument, instead of the category question, that's contact email address. If you want to anonymize the entries, then you can just toggle off this, and that will mean that the judges can't see the answers to this question. So that's how you can anonymize things. Down here is where we actually set the judges' questions, or the review questions as we call them. And you've got the choice of score type questions, recommendations, feedback to the submitter. So sometimes you want to capture things like, the judges particularly liked, and you could capture some details in here, but that will be visible through the portal. So you might want to use that with a bit of caution. Probably less likely that you want the judges to upload an image or a file. Okay, so let's just add a score question. Again, you can change your list boilerplate text to be whatever you want. Maybe you're not scoring them out of 10. Here's where you can set that range. So let's say actually I only want them to score between 1 and 5. So I'm going to want to change this as well. Please score this entry from 1 to 5. This input will have a validation on it. So because we've set this value here, it will mean that if the judge tries to put 6 in here, it will complain. You can create multiple score questions if you want. So maybe you've got one which is for, I don't know, quality, originality, relevance, and they could have different weightings. For now, I'm just going to create one. And you could also say, what's their recommendation? These recommendations are more relevant to papers for a conference. So you might want to change these to winner, runner-up, and better luck next year. Okay, that's a really simple one. You might have a lot more questions that you want to ask in here, but that's essentially where you set up the questions for your judges. Okay, so now we've done some really simple setup for our submission flow. At the moment, it's not visible in our portal. So if we go to the preview for our portal, we can see that there is a submission flow for the industry awards, but we can see it's grayed out. And if we hover over it, it will tell us it's not been published, so it won't appear in the portal. To publish it, go to submission flows, choose industry awards, go to publish flow, and hit publish for everyone down here. That should now make it visible. If you want, you can tweak the text that is going to appear on this little tile, and you can do things like changing the buttons as well. Start a new entry is probably a bit more suitable for awards. Okay, so now if we go back to the content portal, we should, if we go to the preview, see that that's now visible in there. So we're up to here. Okay, so we have set up the judges' questions, but we haven't actually got any judges yet. So they are created over here in event settings. We're going to go to reviewers. And this is basically 2 lists. So I'm going to have a bunch of reviewers. They're going to be various numbered versions of Joe. The reason I'm adding a couple here is because we can also create what are called reviewer groups. This is a fairly typical thing you'll want to do because you may well have different reviewers reviewing different award categories. So I'm going to create some groups that correspond to my categories. Best manufacturer, best groups. I can assign my reviewers to them. So let's say Joe 40 is going to do this one. And if you've got 60 reviewers, this gets much more useful because you can filter the list by the different categories. And you can have multiple reviewers per category. So let's say I want Joe 40 to also review best newcomer. I can add them to multiple categories. Okay. This will become obvious why this is useful in a second. So the next thing is I want to monitor and manage my submissions. So I'm going to share my portal URL with my audience. Let's say this is a link on your website or whatever. So they're going to arrive at the awards portal. You would have added some branding, so it's going to look a lot nicer than this. I hit the enter. I'm going to log in as Joe 10. That's going to send me a login link. If the users want to, they can also create a password here. I have created a password for this user, so I'm going to log in using that. But also, I'll receive an email with a link in it, and I can just click on that link, and that will take me straight in. So when I sign in, I'll get into the portal. Here I can see that text and this open calls for content, and that's all I can see at the moment. So I'm going to start a new entry. I'm going to choose best manufacturer, Acme Corp. I'm going to put some entry details in here and save it for later. And because I've saved it for later, it now lives in this My Task section. You can rename that if you want and call it, My Open Entries or something like that. But what I've done is I've created a draft entry. If we go back to the view, my view is the event manager. If I go into my submission flows, I can now see awards entry has got 1 submission in it. So I can click onto there and see, here's that entry from Joe 10, Acme Corp. Over here, I can see I've got some columns for the judging. I haven't assigned this to anyone yet, so there are no judges down here. So, and obviously there are no scores. This is a little progress bar to show me how the reviewers or judges are getting on. If I want to assign this. I mean, normally you would wait until it's been submitted, obviously, but for now, I'm going to choose this submission, go to my actions list, assign reviewers. Now I know this entry is for the best manufacturer, so I'm going to filter this and say, just show me all the judges in the best manufacturer category. That's filtered the list. I'm going to choose all of them. There's only one, but if there were multiple, they would be here. I've only got one review stage, which is called judging. I'm going to hit assign reviewers. This will pull up the email template that is sent to the reviewer. And it will say, you've been assigned these reviews, and this would be a list of all the reviews that have been assigned. So you can assign multiple reviews at the same time. Again, you've got access to these kind of mail merged fields and so on. So I'm going to hit send to reviewer. That will send an email to Joe 40 with a link that they can click on. And I can now see that this entry has been assigned to Joe 40. And I can see that it's now got this little hourglass, which indicates that we're waiting for Joe 40 to do something. There is still no score because they haven't scored it. And the progress is showing that, well, there's one incomplete review. Joe 40 will receive an email. On here, it's got how to log in. And it's also got the deadline for reviews in there as well. Okay, so I've just logged in as Joe 40, that reviewer. And this brings me to this page, which is all my pending reviews. And I can see I've got that Acme Corp review, which has been submitted to the Industry Awards 2027 when it was assigned and what the due date is. I can click on here to see the submission and see what details they've put in. Obviously, the data is a bit scarce in here, but here's where I can score it. I can say, out of 5. And maybe I think that should be the runner-up. I hit save and submit. And it's now disappeared from my pending reviews, but it is now on my completed reviews list. So there it is. Back over as the event organizer, I can now see for that entry, Joe 40 has completed it. They've given it a sort of amber 1 thumb up, 1 thumb down. If they'd chosen winner, it would be a green thumbs up. If they'd chosen better luck next time, it would have been a red thumbs down. I can see the progress and what the recommendation is, and I can see the score that was given by that judge. Where you've got multiple judges, this score will be an average, a simple mean of the scores given by them. So now I can see, I've got my entries and I can see what the scores are. I can now decide, yeah, this one looks good. I'm going to move it to the shortlisted stage. And so I'm going to go shortlisted. And because I've got an email template for the shortlisted stage in that submission flow, it's popped up this email saying, do you want to send this to the submitter? If I want, I can skip sending it, which I'm going to do. But it's now going to move it from, it was in draft, and it's moved it to shortlisted. So I can look at all my shortlisted entries here. And as the submitter, it's now on my done list. I can't edit it anymore, but I can view it. When I do, I can see, because we've got this bit of text at the top, I can see it's been shortlisted. I think we're done. We've shown how to invite the judges. We've set up reviewer groups. We've monitored and managed the submissions. We've assigned entries to judges, and we've reviewed judges' scores and decided our shortlist, etc. So that is basic introduction to how you can run awards in Lineup Ninja. Good luck. If you need support, just drop us an email at support@lineupninja.com and we'd be more than happy to help. Okay, thanks for getting this far. Good luck with running your events.